Namaste. Welcome to another video in this Docker series. Today we are going to do something very exciting. We are going to write our own Docker file so that we can build a custom image in Docker. So if you ever thought of containerizing your own application, this is the right video for you. So we will be looking into three different Hello World programs in Python, Java Maven and Node.js. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to containerize your own application. So let's get started. What is a Docker file? Think of a Docker file as a set of instructions to build the Docker image. It's like kind of a recipe to make the actual food. It contains things like what base image to use, what are the dependencies that the application needs and that has to be installed in the container, and then what files or libraries needs to be copied from local to container, then what command is needed at the startup. So these all instructions are to be written in the Docker file. It's a simple text file, but it is the foundation of creating reproducible and portable containers. Let's see one very basic example. So let's create a Docker file. So Docker file name is simple, Docker file with D capital. We'll create very simple one. So like we saw from, let's see what image to use. So we will just use Ubuntu image. So we will write Ubuntu. Let's put latest. I don't want to mention any other tags. And we will say just, we will try to write just a hello world thing. So we'll just echo. Now to write the commands, we have to mention it in the angle brackets and then double quotes. We'll just write hello world. So this is kind of a very simple Docker file, just two-liner Docker file. If you build it and then run it, it will just print this echo. This will just print hello world. Okay. Now let's see some of the important commands in the Docker file. So here we are just using two commands, from and cmd. Let's understand what are the most used, commonly used commands. Let's open Docker Hub, and let's open Docker documentation. Here we will just see what are the different commands used in the Docker file reference. Now there are some limited instructions, or let's say limited commands that can be used in the Docker file. We will focus on some of the most important ones. Like from is used just to create a base image, just to download the base image, and that base image is downloaded from Docker Hub if you don't mention any other repository. Like in our case, we can directly search Ubuntu and then we just directly took the latest version. Now there are different tags that will be useful when you start building for your application depending upon the what is needed in your application, but we directly took the latest one. So Ubuntu latest one. Now after that, there is another important command, that is work directory. Now work directory is just for setting the working directory, or just the directory in which the commands will be executed inside the container. Okay, we will be seeing whatever I am mentioning, we will be seeing most of the commands in the examples. After that, there is copy. Copy will copy the files into the container. So there is a similar command called as add. Now add is similar to copy. It will do everything that copy does, as in it will copy files from source to destination, but it will also auto extract files from the archive. Then there is run command. It will execute command inside the container. After that, cmd, as in command that we saw in the basic example, it specifies the command to run when the container starts. Then there is entry point. Now that specifies default executable command. There is a little bit overlap between command and entry point, but the actual difference, or the main difference is cmd or command can be overwritten with user input. Like when you are building the Docker image, it can be overwritten, but the entry point, it will execute no matter what. Then there is expose. Expose is for exposing any port that you want your application to be running on. And then there's another called env, or environment, that will help you to set environment variable for your application. Then there are different things like label. You can use label to add whatever information you want to add about that image. That's done. Let's start building some Docker files. We'll start with a very basic example. Let's start with the Python file. So what I will do is, this is a very basic, just I'm printing hello world. Okay, so we will first be building it locally to understand how things are working on local, and then we'll try to replicate that in the Docker file so that there is a better understanding about how a Docker file is created. Now here, while creating a Python application, there might be different there might be different libraries, classes that you are importing. But in our example, we are just using hello world. So we don't have any as such dependency other than just having Python interpreter. So when we run this, we can open the terminal, we can directly run from here. Now let's check we are in the right directory. No, we're not. So let's go to Python. We'll be seeing 3 examples. If you want to run it, what you'll do, you'll just say Python and pay attention, I'm opening it in bash terminal instead of PowerShell. Python and then the file name, it will just print welcome to Docker tutorial Python. Now what all things we did here is we have Python installed, latest version, whatever version is needed for your application, you have to install that. That is it. And we are just running one single file, main.py. Okay, so let's create the Docker file, D capital. Let me clear this. So in Docker file, first we have to select the base image. That is, we'll start with from instruction. So for base image, let's go to Docker Hub to see what image suits us best. So let's search here Python. We can take the latest one. Anyways, we don't have much in our code, but you can use different tags. We can try different tag as well. So let's try this tag. Or different versions of Python are there. You can select whichever suits your need. Now, depending on the version, the size might differ. Now, I'm taking a very slim version so that we don't have to install much here, so that it takes less space. And let's paste it. So now the first step is we are just taking the base image as Python :slim bullseye. Let's mention the work directory as well. Work directory. So this is not compulsory for application, but to have a proper organization of your files, you can do that. So let's say main, or let's say application, app file. Then we will copy when we use the copy command. So what we'll do is copy main.py from, this is source, to destination main.py. Since our work directory is already app here, so these all things will be executed inside app. Now here copy from local, as in this is the current directory. We are in this directory. When the Docker file will run, it will check for the main.py in this particular directory, and then it will copy to the root directory, as in if we did not mention work directory, it will directly copy to root directory. Now since we have already mentioned the work directory, it will copy to /app main directory. Okay. Then we will directly run the Python command like we did in the local, right? Python main. So we'll do like same thing. The syntax will be like this: open the bracket and then double quotes. We will just say Python, comma, it is in the array or list form, and then we will say main.py. Now let's save it. Now we'll build this image, and then we'll try to run it and see if the container displays the message that we're trying to see. The message is over here. We are trying to get with this message. So to build the command, what we have to do is, so let's see the build command first, so that when you search for it, so here Docker build, and there are different options available. So the main command is like this: Docker build x build blah blah blah, and the aliases are these all things. So we will use Docker build and we will tag it. We'll mention -t. We can also mention -f if you have Docker file in a different path, but here we will directly have it on the same folder as we are running the file. So we will be using this tag. We will tag the image and then we'll build the Docker file. So very simple. Let's do it. So Docker build -t for tag. Let's tag our image Python hello world. And so if you're mentioning file name in if the Docker file is in different directory and you want to mention it specifically, you have to mention -f and then the path to that Docker file. Or else you can directly mention the path as well from here if it is in different folder or directory. But since we have it in the same directory, we'll just mention dot. So now let's enter. It will take some time to build. So let's see if the image is created. Docker images. So we see our image just created now. Now let's run it. Docker run and then the image name. Let's copy it and it should print welcome to Docker tutorial Python. So we just took the base image which had already Python installed, latest version or whatever version you have. You'll have to search for the tag for that. Then we just changed the directory to app and then we copied our main file from source to destination and then we ran the command. So it was all successful and then we were able to execute the file as well. So this was the very simple example where we just had a one-liner and we had no other dependency than to have Python installed and it worked perfectly. Now let's try the same thing for Node.js application. We'll be seeing example for Java Maven as well. Now let's move on to Node application here. Let me clear it and let me change the directory. Okay, so while installing Node application, Node.js application, you might have different steps involved. Okay, so like if you want, we can start it from the scratch as well, just to have a to understand what all things are needed while installing. So let's delete the dependencies here. We will try to install or we'll try to run this application locally and then we will see how to perform the same steps on with the Docker file or so how to Dockerize that application. So if we click on app.js, so this is just an example that I've taken, just hello world. We can type like this, hello world from node, like this, hello world node. And our application will be listening on port number 3000 and we'll just print it like that, listening at localhost 3000. But this will not run without the dependencies that it needs. So let's do some steps that are necessary to run the node application. So let's do npm init. Done. Now you can see package.json is there. Now let's install. You don't have to understand these steps, as in I'm just so if you're a DevOps engineer, you'll be already be provided with the steps by the developer what is to be done to set the application locally. If you're a developer for this application, then you already know how to install it locally. I'm just showing so that we know how to replicate the steps on a Docker file. Now let's run the application and see if it is working. Okay, it is listening at 3000. Of course, we are just running that port. Let's see if it runs on our localhost 3000. Okay, so it says hello world node. Now remember what all steps we did. We did npm init, we did npm install, and then we ran node app.js. We did this locally because we wanted these dependencies to be installed. But while creating a container, we can directly copy these files. So the installation part that we'll have to do, but we don't have to do init again because init will just create the package.json that we already have. So let's create a Docker file now. D capital, no extension, Docker file. The same thing, we'll first use from the base image as well that we want to use. Let's go to Docker Hub and search for Node. We'll go with the official image, and without thinking much, let's go with the latest one itself. Let's just say Node latest. Now, what was the next step? Let's mention the work directory as well. And here as well, we'll just have the same thing. Let's say it is app. Now, first what we'll do is we'll copy package.json. So usually package.json has all the dependencies that needs to be installed. In Python, like we have requirements.txt. Similarly, here it is package.json. So let's copy it. Let's copy package, dot JSON, or let's do one thing, package.json and package log.json. Let's install both of this over here. Now we can install all the dependencies mentioned in the package.json. So for that we'll be doing run command, and we will just say npm install. So it will install everything that is mentioned in package.json. Now final step, let's copy everything. That is, in our case it's just the app.js, but let's say dot so that you get that flavor as well. So dot from source and dot till in the container. Post that, we will just put the command node like we did over here, node app.js. So we'll do the same thing here. Curly brackets, square brackets. We'll say node. Since it's a list, we will say app.js. Now you can mention label here as well, and then mention whatever label you want to mention. But for now, let's skip it. We'll see this in the official example when we encounter it. It might be in the next video, but for now, let's see it over here. Let's clear it. Same step now. We'll first build the image, and we have the Docker file in the root directory itself. Let's build the image, docker build -t, and let's name it node hello world, and the path to the Docker file, that is current directory, and so dot. Let's run it. So depending upon the file size from where you're installing it, it might take time or it might happen early. So this is done. Let's see if the image is from Docker images, and we have node hello world as well. Let me clear the screen. Docker images. Let's try to run this image. Docker run. Now I can mention -d to run it in detached mode, and then mention -p for the port. But I want to see what message it is printing. Basically, I want to see this message, example app listening, blah blah. So let's remove it for now. We can try that as well. For now, this, and we'll be mapping it with 3000 locally and 3000 port on that as well. Let's on the container as well. Let's copy this node hello world and this enter. Okay, it says it's listening at 3000. Did we close this application? Okay, it is already running. So let me cancel it so that you know it is not already running. Let's try it again. I closed it. We can map it to a different one, but no confusion is that 3001. Okay, it still says 3000 because this is hard coded. So, but currently application is running on 3001. Let's try that. Localhost 3001, and we can see hello world from node. So application is running, and I control C to exit it. Now what we can do is let's put -d over here so that it runs in detached mode. Let's change the port again. So you see the terminal is free now when we run it in detached mode. Let's see if application is running. Localhost 3002. Okay, so it's running, not an issue. So what we did was, we did the exact steps that we did locally, just that on local we had to init, as in initialize npm, as in create the package.json. Then we had to install all the dependencies and then run the command. On Docker file, since we already have package.json created, we just first copied package.json and package log.json. So there we are mentioning package star.json, and then we ran npm install to install all the dependencies, and then we did copy everything to uh, the app directory here, and then we just ran node app.json. So similar way. Now this was slightly uh, one step ahead of the Python application, where we did not install anything in the Python. We already had the installation done for Python, and we ran it. Here what we did is, we took an image which had Node already installed, but we installed all the dependencies as well. One command extra. Now let's move on to another application, Java Maven application. There we will see how to create a multi-stage run, as a multi-stage Docker file. Okay, let's close it. Close this. Now this is also a simple example that I've taken. Let's change the directory, cd. Okay, so we have this application, and I have to go one step in as well, so that I am in the directory where the POM is, otherwise it will not install. So now, let me tell you one thing. So before setting this up, while I was trying to set this up locally, although it is a very simple application, but there were some challenges that I faced. The challenges means, I already had JDK versions, different JDK versions in the application for practice that I usually do. And my Maven version was like one step or one or two versions behind. So I had to install the latest JDK, latest Maven, and then it was working. But I faced a lot of issues wherein it said the JDK version is old, or the version that Maven supports is not installed. So I had to uninstall everything. I had to check the environment variable, lot of things. But in the meanwhile, when I was trying to create the Docker file, it uh, it did not take me much time. As in, the Docker file creation was very simple, since we are directly taking the images from the Docker Hub and running it. So it was quite fast than setting it up locally. So this is what we were talking about in the previous lectures, wherein we said there is no dependency on the environment. Like in my app, in my local system, there were different versions of the JDK and Maven. This is very simple example, but in real world, where there are servers or uh, VMs that are hosted on cloud, if you do not use Docker, and if you have multiple environments like dev, UAT, SIT, production, versions might be different if a proper installation is not done every time. So in that case, Docker helps, because you have to just create the Docker image and everything is inbuilt in that Docker image. So that was just to give you a glimpse of what Docker can do. So let's run it, MVN clean package. So I'm just trying to create package locally. I already have Maven installed. I already have JDK, whatever the latest version is installed. I'm just running basic hello world program here. Okay, so it is running properly. So to run it locally, we just did mvn clean package. So this is the only command that we need. But we also need Maven latest version. We also need JDK latest version. So what we'll do is, same thing. Let's create Docker file with D capital. Say from. So I'm having a latest version of Maven 3.9.6, and I've taken this version. So this is the task that you will be mostly doing it when you're creating a Docker file, checking the exact compatible version with your application. So that is the thing that will take more time. So what we'll do is, since we're building multiple stages here, so let's have a different image for this, and let's name it as build. Now from Maven, as in from this image that already has Maven installed, we will then move ahead with, we'll just mention working directory. Let's do it same here, like let's say app here, like we did it in the previous one. Then Let's copy everything from local dot to slash app. And now let's run our application mvn clean package. Now this thing, what it will do is it will create the this file. If we go here, it will create the jar file. So if we go ls hyphen target, it will create this jar file, the executable. Yeah, maven docker app 1.0 snapshot.jar. So basically this is compiling it. But what we want is we want it to run it. So for local, in local, what you will do is you will directly, let's try to run it locally. If you go over here in target to run like java hyphen jar and the image name, it just says welcome to docker tutorial java maven. So after compiling, we'll be doing the same thing. So what we will do is we are dividing it into two parts. This will be a different stage and this will be a different stage. Now again, to create another stage, we will be needing a different base image. I will be using this one. I've already found out how, if this works or not. Same thing, we'll just say it to choose work directory as app. Then now we don't have to copy everything here. We just want this one from the target, the jar from the target. Okay. So here a little bit of trick here is, while writing copy, we will copy it from stage. From which stage? Build stage. From build stage and the path. Now the path is we are copying it in app, and then on our local we can see it was created inside the target folder. So we'll mention that target, and the application jar file name is this one. So we'll say this jar file, and let's rename it so that there is no confusion. App.jar. And then finally cmd. Same thing that we did how we did it locally. Java jar, and now we can mention this one, but we have already renamed it. Let's call that then app.jar. Now let's try to run it. So you see there are two different stages. One is the build stage, and then from this build stage we are copying snapshot image as a jar file, and then we are running that. So this way, since different layers are formed here, this way if we did everything in one layer or in one docker stage, then it will take much more space. Here it will just take lesser space, since we are not keeping the build image. So let's clear the screen and try to execute this one. Okay, let's first change the directory because we're in the target folder. We should have the docker file in the same folder. Docker build -t hello maven hello world, maven hello world, and images in the same folder currently. So dot. Now let's see if the image is formed. We see this, so let's run it. Docker run the image maven hello world, and we get the output. Welcome to docker tutorial java maven. Okay, so we are good here. So let's quickly go through what we did today very quickly so that we can see what are the differences over here. So first we saw a very simple file wherein we just had an Ubuntu base image, and then we ran hello world. We did not run it, it was just an example. Then for Python, what we did is we took a basic Python image which had a very slim version of Python installed, and then we copied the main file from source to destination, and then we ran Python main. It was quite simple. Then we understood how we installed the applications, or how do we dockerize an application which is written in Node.js. So we took the Node.js image, then we copied the package.json and package log.json, and then we installed everything that was mentioned in the package.json. Then we copied everything, and then final command node space app.js. And then finally, the latest one, wherein we saw how a multi-stage Docker file is created. So this is the stage 1, this is a different stage. So this stage is called as build. For multi-stage, as in to name the stage, you use as. So this was the build stage wherein the compilation was done and the jar file was created. And this is the execution phase wherein we ran the jar file with Java jar and the jar file. I hope you were able to follow along. If you have any doubt regarding anything in Docker, you can ask me through comment section. I'll be happy to help. In next video, we'll be going through an example mentioned in the Docker documentation itself. We'll be starting from scratch, wherein we will be downloading the application till Dockerizing that application. So stay tuned.